Dr. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the massive stone structure rising from the purple sand of planet Kepler 442c. The ancient building twisted upward in impossible spirals, defying everything he knew about physics and engineering. His team had been exploring these ruins for 3 days, but Marcus still felt like a child seeing magic for the first time. "Stay close to the group, Marcus," called Dr. Sarah Webb, the expedition leader. "We don't know what kind of traps these Zephyrians might have left behind." Marcus nodded, but his attention was already caught by a series of strange symbols carved into a nearby wall. The markings seemed to shimmer and move when he looked at them directly. He pulled out his scanner and moved closer, fascination overriding caution. The symbols were unlike anything in their database. They weren't quite pictographs, but they weren't abstract either. They seemed to tell a story, showing tall, graceful figures with multiple arms performing some kind of ritual around a glowing sphere. A sudden flash of light filled the sky. Marcus looked up to see dark clouds gathering with unnatural speed. Lightning crackled between them, but it was silver instead of white, and it made no sound. "Electromagnetic storm incoming," Sarah's voice crackled through his communicator. "Everyone back to the ship, now!" Marcus turned to follow his team, but another silver lightning bolt struck nearby. His scanner sparked and died. His communicator let out a high-pitched whine and went silent. The storm was interfering with all their equipment. He ran toward where he thought the ship was, but the twisted architecture of the ruins made everything look the same. Corridors that should have led straight ahead curved back on themselves. Stairs that went up somehow ended up going down. Marcus quickly realized he was completely lost. The storm was getting worse. Silver lightning struck the ground all around him, leaving glowing purple marks in the sand. The air itself seemed to hum with energy. Marcus needed shelter, and he needed it fast. He pressed himself against the wall with the strange symbols, hoping to find some protection from the electrical chaos. As his hand touched the carvings, they began to glow with a soft blue light. The wall felt warm under his palm. Suddenly the symbols started moving. They flowed like liquid across the stone surface, rearranging themselves into new patterns. Marcus watched in amazement as they formed what looked like a doorway. The wall simply disappeared. Where solid stone had been a moment before, now there was an opening leading into darkness. Cool air flowed out, carrying a strange but pleasant smell like flowers and copper mixed together. Marcus knew he should wait for his team. He knew he should be careful. But the scientist in him was stronger than his fear. He pulled out his backup flashlight and stepped through the opening. The corridor beyond was nothing like the rough stone passages they had explored earlier. The walls were smooth and seemed to be made of some kind of crystal that reflected his flashlight beam in rainbow patterns. The floor felt soft under his feet, almost like walking on thick carpet. The passage curved gently downward, following a path that seemed to twist through space itself. Marcus tried to keep track of which direction he was going, but after several turns he gave up. The corridor seemed to be leading him deeper into the heart of the structure. Strange sounds echoed from ahead. Not voices exactly, but something like singing. If singing could be made of light and water instead of sound. The melody was beautiful and sad at the same time, making Marcus feel homesick for a place he had never been. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that took Marcus's breath away. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadows, and the walls were covered in the same crystal material as the passage. But what made the room truly amazing were the living things floating throughout the space. Thousands of jellyfish-like creatures drifted through the air, their translucent bodies pulsing with soft light. They came in every color Marcus could imagine, and several he was sure he had never seen before. They moved in slow, graceful patterns, creating waves of color that flowed across the chamber like an aurora. In the center of the room, suspended in mid-air by invisible forces, was an enormous cocoon. It was easily 10 feet tall and seemed to be made of the same crystal material as the walls, but it pulsed with internal light like a giant heartbeat. Marcus approached slowly, his scanner forgotten in his wonder. He had studied alien artifacts for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. The cocoon was clearly artificial, but it felt alive. As he got closer, he could see something moving inside it. The floating creatures seemed to notice him. They began gathering around the cocoon, their lights pulsing faster. The singing sound grew louder, more urgent. Marcus realized they were trying to tell him something. A crack appeared in the surface of the cocoon. Marcus froze. The crack widened, spreading across the crystal surface like a spider web. Light poured out, brighter than his flashlight, brighter than the floating creatures, bright enough to make him shield his eyes. The cocoon split open with a sound like breaking glass mixed with wind chimes. From inside stepped the most beautiful and terrifying being Marcus had ever seen. She was tall, at least 7 feet, with 6 arms that moved with fluid grace. Her skin was pale but seemed to shift colors like an opal, reflecting the lights of the floating creatures around her. Her hair was long and silver, floating around her head as if she were underwater, but it was her eyes that made Marcus forget how to breathe. They were compound eyes like an insect's, but enormous and faceted like jewels. They reflected the chamber's lights in 1,000 different ways, creating patterns that seemed to shift and change as he watched. When she looked at him, Marcus felt like she was seeing not just his body, but his thoughts, his memories, his soul. The being stepped out of the broken cocoon and stretched her 6 arms. The floating creatures swirled around her in welcome, their lights pulsing in rhythm with her movements. She was clearly their queen, their goddess, their everything, and Marcus had just watched her being born. The queen turned to look at him fully. Her expression was unreadable, but Marcus could feel power radiating from her like heat from a fire. When she spoke, her voice was like music, but music that could command mountains to move or stars to fall. "Who dares enter the sacred chamber of awakening?" she asked in perfect, unaccented English. Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but no sound came out. He tried again and managed a weak croak. "I'm sorry," he said. "I got lost in the storm. I didn't know this was sacred. I'm Dr. Marcus Chen. I'm human." The queen tilted her head, studying him with those impossible eyes. The floating creatures around her pulsed with different colors as if they were having a conversation in light. "Human," she repeated, tasting the word. "You are far from your world, little human. Do you know what you have done?" Marcus shook his head, not trusting his voice. "You have witnessed the awakening of Zarathul, queen of the Zephyrian Empire. By ancient law, you must now serve me for eternity, or die." She raised one of her hands, and Marcus could see energy beginning to gather around her fingers. "However," she continued, her voice carrying a note of curiosity, "you are the first being to enter this chamber without invitation in 1,000 years. Tell me, little human, how did you find this place?" Marcus found his voice, though it still shook a little. "The symbols on the wall. They were glowing, and when I touched them, they moved. The wall just disappeared." Queen Zarathul's compound eyes shifted colors, cycling through blues and greens. "Impossible. The sacred seals can only be opened by those of royal blood." "I don't know about that," Marcus said, gaining confidence as his scientific mind took over. "But the symbols definitely responded to touch. Look, I recorded everything on my backup scanner." He pulled out a small device and showed her the readings he had taken. The queen moved closer, her 6 arms flowing like water as she examined the data. Marcus caught a scent like cinnamon and starlight. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Your touch triggered a genetic lock that has been dormant for millennia. But you are clearly not Zephyrian." Marcus looked up at her towering form. "No, definitely not. I'm from Earth. We're a pretty young species compared to you. This whole structure is amazing. The way it bends space, the living ecosystem in here, the technology that can create a cocoon like that." He gestured excitedly at the broken crystal shell. The queen stepped back, surprised by his enthusiasm. In her 1,000 years of life, no one had ever spoken to her with such casual interest. Her subjects cowered or worshipped, but this strange creature seemed to see her as a puzzle to solve. "You are not afraid," she observed. Marcus paused, considering. "Should I be? I mean, you're clearly powerful and beautiful and probably could kill me without thinking about it. But you're also the most incredible discovery in human history. The chance to learn about your species, your technology, your culture." He trailed off, realizing he was rambling. "You think I am beautiful?" The question seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised Marcus. He felt his face heat up. "Well, yes. Different from humans, obviously, but amazing. The way you move, the way light plays across your skin, those eyes." He stopped, embarrassed. The queen was quiet for a long moment. No one had called her beautiful in centuries. They called her mighty, terrible, divine, but never beautiful. Beauty implied equality, admiration rather than worship. "Tell me about your species," she said suddenly. "These humans. How long do you live?" "About 80 years if we're lucky. Some make it to 100, so brief," she whispered. Yet you travel between stars. Marcus pulled out his tablet, which had somehow survived the electromagnetic storm. We're pretty good at working together when we need to. Look, this is Earth. He showed her pictures of cities, forests, oceans. The Queen studied each image carefully, her eyes shifting through different color patterns as she processed what she saw. You build upward, she noted, looking at pictures of skyscrapers. Limited space, lots of people. We have to be creative, and we like reaching for the sky. He showed her more pictures, art galleries, concerts, sporting events. People laughing, working, playing together. These are all humans, she asked, pointing to faces of different colors and features. Yes, we have a lot of variety. Different continents, different climates, different cultures. It makes life interesting. The Queen was fascinated. In Zephyrian society, everyone looked similar, acted similar, thought similar. Variety was discouraged. Unity meant uniformity. Do they all serve you? She asked. Marcus laughed, then caught himself. Sorry, I'm not laughing at you. It's just... No, nobody serves me. I'm not important at all. I'm just a scientist who studies old things. But you command this device. She gestured at his tablet. I own it, I suppose. But humans don't really serve each other the way you mean. We work together. We help each other. But we're all pretty much equal. The concept was so alien to the Queen that she couldn't quite grasp it. Who leads you? Lots of people. We have governments, but we choose them. And we can change our minds and choose different ones if we don't like how they're doing. Marcus realized he was probably explaining democracy very badly. But the Queen was listening with intense interest. You choose your leaders, she repeated slowly. Sure, we argue about it a lot, but that's part of the fun. Marcus's stomach growled loudly. Sorry, I haven't eaten since this morning. He pulled out a ration bar from his pack and unwrapped it. The Queen watched curiously as he took a bite. Want some? Marcus offered, breaking the bar in half. It's not great, but it's food. The Queen stared at the offered food. No one had ever shared a meal with her. Servants brought her food, subjects offered tribute, but no one had ever simply shared what they had. She took the bar with one delicate hand and examined it. You would give this to me freely? Of course. It's just food. She took a small bite. The taste was strange but not unpleasant. But the taste wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the casual generosity, the assumption that sharing was natural. Your species does this often, sharing with strangers, all the time. It's how we are. Someone's hungry, you share your food. Someone's lost, you help them find their way. Someone's sad, you try to make them laugh. Make them laugh? Marcus grinned. Humor, jokes, funny stories. Wait, do Zephyrians laugh? The Queen looked confused. I do not understand this concept. Oh, this is great. Okay. So humans like to find funny things in life, even when things are bad. Like I'm supposed to be studying ancient ruins, and instead I accidentally break into a secret chamber and meet an alien queen. My boss is going to kill me. He said it with such a rueful expression that something bubbled up in the Queen's chest. A strange sound escaped her lips like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Was that? Marcus asked, delighted. I do not know what that was, the Queen admitted, but she didn't sound displeased. I think you just laughed. That's amazing. The floating creatures around them pulsed brighter, as if responding to their Queen's new emotion. Before the Queen could respond, the sound of marching feet echoed through the chamber. Heavy boots on crystal floors getting closer. The Royal Guard, the Queen said, her voice returning to its formal tone. They have found us. 6 figures in elaborate armor entered the chamber. They were Zephyrians like the Queen, but shorter and bulkier, with 4 arms instead of 6. Their compound eyes glowed red as they saw Marcus. Your Majesty, the lead guard said, bowing deeply. We sense the awakening. We came to... He stopped, noticing Marcus. There is an alien in the sacred chamber. Yes, the Queen said simply. Shall we destroy it, Your Majesty? Marcus felt his heart stop, but the Queen raised one hand. No, this human has interested me. I would learn more about his species before deciding his fate. The guards looked confused. Their Queen had never shown interest in aliens before. She barely showed interest in her own subjects. But Your Majesty, the guard captain said carefully, the law is clear. Any who witness the royal awakening must serve or die. The law, the Queen said, looking at Marcus with those shifting kaleidoscope eyes, may need to be examined. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. In the 1,000-year history of the Zephyrian Empire, no one had ever suggested that the law might need examination. Marcus, unaware that he had just witnessed the first crack in an empire, smiled and waved at the guards. "Hi there," he said cheerfully. "I'm Marcus. Sorry about the whole trespassing thing." Over the next few days, Marcus found himself in the strangest situation of his life. The Queen had given him quarters in the royal palace, a massive structure that seemed to grow from the mountain itself. His room was larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, with walls that showed moving pictures of alien landscapes, and a bed that adjusted itself to his body. But the most amazing thing was his daily conversations with Queen Zarathul. She was fascinated by human culture, asking endless questions about everything from art to agriculture. Marcus did his best to explain concepts that he had never thought about deeply before. "So humans create images and sounds for no practical purpose?" she asked one morning as they walked through her private garden. The plants around them were unlike anything on Earth, with crystalline leaves that chimed in the wind and flowers that changed colors based on the viewer's emotions. "We call it art," Marcus explained. "Music, paintings, sculptures, stories. We do it because it makes us feel things, or because it's beautiful, or because we want to share an idea in a new way. But it serves no function. It serves the function of making life more than just survival. Here, listen to this." Marcus pulled out his tablet and played a recording of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. The Queen's eyes widened as the music filled the garden. Her skin shifted through colors Marcus had never seen before. This makes me feel..." She struggled for words. "What does it make you feel?" "Large, small, sad, happy, all at once." Marcus smiled. "That's exactly what it's supposed to do." The Queen was quiet for a long time, listening to the music. Finally she said, "My people have no art." "What do you mean?" "We have architecture for function, clothing for protection, tools for work. But nothing, just for feeling." Marcus looked around the garden with new eyes. It was beautiful, but in a cold, perfect way. There was no messiness, no chaos, no happy accidents that made things interesting. "What do Zephyrians do for fun?" he asked. "Fun? You know, when you're not working. What do you do to enjoy yourselves?" The Queen stopped walking. "We serve the Empire. We fulfill our roles. We maintain order. But what do you personally enjoy? What makes you happy?" The question seemed to break something in the Queen. She sat down heavily on a bench made of living wood. "I do not know," she whispered. "In 1,000 years, I do not think anyone has asked me what makes me happy." Marcus sat beside her, careful not to sit too close. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." "Is it?" "I rule the greatest empire in this galaxy. I have power beyond measure. My subjects obey my every command. But you're lonely." The word hit her like a physical blow. I am a queen. Queens are not lonely. Everyone gets lonely. It's human nature. I guess it might be Zephyrian nature too." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the crystal leaves chime in the wind. "Tell me about friendship," the Queen said suddenly. Marcus brightened. "Oh, that's easy. Friends are people you choose to spend time with because you like them. You talk to them, laugh with them, help them when they need it. They help you too. You choose them? Of course. You can't force friendship. It just happens when people understand each other." The Queen looked at him with those shifting eyes. "Do you consider me a friend?" Marcus thought about it. "I'd like to be your friend. But friendship goes both ways. You'd have to choose it too." The concept was revolutionary. The Queen commanded loyalty, demanded obedience, inspired worship. But she had never had anyone simply choose to like her. That afternoon, she called a meeting of her advisors. Marcus was invited to observe, sitting in a chair that had been hastily brought in for his smaller frame. The advisors were older Zephyrians with more elaborate arms and duller colors than the Queen. They spoke in formal, careful language, always agreeing with whatever the Queen said. The harvest reports from the outer systems. "Your Majesty," one advisor said, presenting a crystal tablet. "Excellent," the Queen replied automatically. "Actually," Marcus said, then caught himself. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." "Please," the Queen said. "What were you going to say?" The advisors looked shocked. The Queen had never asked for an outsider's opinion before. "Well, I was looking at those numbers and they seem really low for that many planets. On Earth, we've learned that crop yields can be improved by sharing techniques between different farming communities. Have you tried having your farmers talk to each other?" "Talk to each other?" one advisor sputtered. Farmers do not make policy. They follow instructions. But they're the ones actually growing the food, Marcus said reasonably. They probably know things about soil conditions and weather patterns that people in the capital don't know. The Queen leaned forward. Continue. Maybe you could set up some kind of communication network. Let farmers from different planets share ideas. What works on one world might work on another. The advisors looked horrified. Your Majesty, one said urgently, we cannot allow the lower castes to communicate freely. It would lead to chaos. Would it? The Queen asked. Marcus, on your world do farmers communicate with each other? All the time. We have conferences, online forums, scientific journals. Sharing information makes everyone better. And this causes chaos? Sometimes there are disagreements, but mostly it just makes better food for everyone. The Queen was quiet for a moment. Then she said, implement the human suggestion. Create communication networks for our agricultural systems. The advisors looked like they had been struck by lightning. Your Majesty, one tried again, this goes against our entire social structure. Then perhaps, the Queen said carefully, our social structure needs examination. After the meeting, the advisors gathered in worried groups, whispering to each other. Marcus caught fragments of their conversations. Corrupted by alien influence, dangerous ideas, must protect the Empire. That evening, the Queen found Marcus on the balcony of his quarters, looking up at the alien stars. They are afraid, she said, joining him at the railing. Your advisors? Yeah, I noticed. Change is scary, is it? You humans seem to embrace change, Marcus laughed. Not all of us. Lots of humans are afraid of change too, but we've learned that things that don't change tend to die. Die? Not literally die usually. But they stop growing, stop improving. They get stuck. The Queen was quiet for a long time. I think my empire may be stuck. What makes you think that? We have had the same laws, the same customs, the same ways of doing things for 1,000 years. We call it stability, but when you describe your world, your people seem so alive. My people go through their days like walking statues. Marcus chose his words carefully. Maybe they just need permission to be more than statues. Permission from me? Permission from themselves with your example. You're their queen. If you show them it's okay to think new thoughts, to try new things, maybe they'll surprise you. The Queen turned to look at him. You really believe that change is good? I believe that growth is good. And you can't grow without changing. As they talked, neither of them noticed the figure listening from the shadows. Guard Captain Morthak had heard every word, and his eyes glowed red with anger. The human was poisoning their perfect queen with dangerous ideas. Ideas that could destroy everything the Zephyrian Empire stood for. Something had to be done. In the darkness of the palace, plans began to form. Plans to save the Empire from its own queen, and to eliminate the human who had started it all. Marcus woke up to the sound of his door being smashed open. 6 guards in full armor stormed into his room, their eyes glowing angry red in the darkness. Get up, alien, Guard Captain Morthak commanded. You are under arrest for crimes against the Empire. What crimes? Marcus asked, trying to clear the sleep from his head. I've been a guest here. You have corrupted our queen with your poisonous ideas. You have turned her against the sacred traditions of our people. Marcus was dragged from his bed and marched through the palace corridors. Other guards joined them along the way, and he could see palace servants peeking out from doorways with frightened faces. They brought him to the throne room, where Queen Zarathul was already waiting. But she wasn't sitting on her throne. She was on her knees with heavy chains around all 6 of her arms. Marcus, she called out when she saw him. Are you hurt? I'm okay. What's happening here? A rescue, Captain Morthak announced to the assembled court. We are saving our empire from the madness that has infected our queen. An older Zephyrian stepped forward. Marcus recognized him as Lord Kethmore, the queen's chief advisor. Citizens of the Empire, Lord Kethmore announced, his voice carrying through the vast chamber. Our beloved queen has been poisoned by alien ideas. She speaks of change, of giving voice to the lower castes, of questioning our sacred laws. This is not the wisdom of a true queen, but the corruption of a diseased mind. The assembled nobles murmured agreement. Marcus could see fear in their faces, but also something else. Relief maybe that someone was taking action against the changes that had begun to shake their comfortable world. The human will be executed, Captain Morthak declared, and the queen will be treated until she recovers from her illness. Marcus felt cold. He knew what that kind of treatment meant. They would break her spirit, make her forget everything she had learned about hope and change and growth. "She's not sick," Marcus said loudly. "She's thinking for herself for the first time in her life." Silence. Lord Kethmore snapped. "You have done enough damage, alien." But Marcus wasn't done. "Look at yourselves. You're so afraid of change that you're willing to chain your own queen. What kind of empire is built on fear?" "A stable one," Captain Morthak replied. "We have maintained order for 1,000 years. You've maintained stagnation for 1,000 years." Marcus shot back. "Your people are dying inside, going through the motions of life without actually living. And you want to drag your queen back down into that darkness with you?" "Our way has worked," Lord Kethmore said coldly. "Has it? Really? Because from what I've seen, your empire is falling apart. Your farms are failing. Your people are miserable. And your leaders are so terrified of new ideas that they have to chain up anyone who thinks differently." The queen struggled against her chains. "Listen to him. He speaks truth." "He speaks poison," Captain Morthak said. "Guard, prepare the execution device." A strange machine was wheeled into the center of the room. It looked like a crystal cage surrounded by energy projectors. Marcus had no idea how it worked, but it clearly wasn't designed for a pleasant death. As the guards pushed him toward the device, Marcus heard a commotion from the back of the throne room. The great doors burst open and more Zephyrians poured in. But these weren't nobles or guards. They were workers, farmers, engineers, the lower castes that the nobles barely acknowledged existed. "Stop," one of them shouted. "We will not allow this." Marcus recognized her. It was Veltar, one of the agricultural coordinators who had been part of the new communication network the Queen had established. She had 4 arms instead of 6, marking her as a worker caste. "How dare you enter the royal chamber?" Lord Kethmore sputtered. "Guards, remove these people," but the guards hesitated. There were hundreds of workers, and they kept coming. Soon the throne room was packed with Zephyrians from every level of society except the nobility. "We have heard the Queen's new ideas," Veltar announced. "We have tasted freedom for the first time in our lives, and we will not go back to the old ways. You have no choice," Captain Morthak roared. "You will obey." "No," said another voice. A young guard stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal a face younger than the others. "We will not obey orders to harm those who have brought hope to our people." More guards stepped forward, laying down their weapons. Marcus realized that the Queen's ideas had spread further than anyone had thought. "This is mutiny," Lord Kethmore declared. "This is evolution," Queen Zarathul said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber despite her chains. "My people have learned to think for themselves. They have learned to choose, and they choose freedom over fear." The Loyalist guards were now outnumbered 10 to 1. Captain Morthak looked around desperately, but even some of his own soldiers were wavering. "You cannot do this," he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Without order, without structure, there will be chaos." "There will be change," the Queen replied. "And change is not chaos. Change is growth." Veltar approached the Queen's chains. "Your Majesty, may we?" The Queen smiled. A real smile, not the formal expression she had worn for centuries. "Please, and Veltar." "Thank you." As the workers freed their queen, Marcus felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. He had wanted to learn about alien culture, not revolutionize it. But seeing the hope in these people's faces, the way they stood straighter and moved with purpose instead of just going through motions, maybe this wasn't such a bad thing after all. The Queen stood, rubbing circulation back into her arms. She looked at the nobles who had tried to overthrow her, and Marcus expected her to be angry. Instead, she looked sad. "I do not blame you," she said to Lord Kethmore and the others. "You were doing what you thought was right. But the old ways are ending. Whether we guide that change or fight it, I choose to guide it. You will destroy everything we have built," Lord Kethmore said bitterly. "No," the Queen replied. "I will help our people build something better." She turned to Marcus. "My friend, I owe you a debt I can never repay." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus said. "You did this yourselves. I just asked a few questions." "Sometimes," the Queen said, "the right questions are all that's needed to change the world." Captain Morthak and several of the noble lords were escorted away, not to prison, but to quarters where they would be safe while the transition continued. The Queen had learned mercy along with everything else. As the crowd dispersed, Marcus found himself alone with the Queen in the vast throne room. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now we build something new," she said. "A government where all voices can be heard. Laws that serve the people instead of controlling them. An empire that grows instead of just enduring. It won't be easy. The best things never are." She looked at him with those shifting kaleidoscope eyes. "Will you stay? Will you help us learn how to be free?" Marcus thought about his research team, probably still searching for him. He thought about his comfortable life back on Earth, his predictable routine, his quiet office where the biggest decision was which ancient artifact to study next. Then he looked at the Queen, at the hope in her alien face, and made the easiest decision of his life. "I'd be honored to help," he said. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the balcony of what used to be called the Royal Palace and was now simply called the Council Building. The city below had changed dramatically. Where once there had been rigid sections separating the different castes, now there were mixed neighborhoods where workers, nobles, and everyone in between lived side by side. The biggest change was the sound. The city hummed with conversation, laughter, and music. Art had exploded across Zephyrian culture like a dam bursting. Streets were decorated with murals and musicians played on corners. The crystal chimes of traditional architecture had been joined by drums, stringed instruments, and voices raised in song. "The delegation from the Nexari Empire has arrived," Veltar announced, entering the balcony. She now served as the chief coordinator of external affairs, a position that hadn't existed under the old system. Marcus nodded. The Nexari were the third alien species to make contact with the new Zephyrian Commonwealth this month. Word had spread quickly through the galaxy that the formerly hostile Zephyrian Empire had transformed into something unprecedented. A multi-caste democracy that welcomed new ideas and outside perspectives. "How's Queen? Sorry. First Speaker Zarathul handling the diplomatic meetings?" Marcus asked. Veltar's compound eyes shifted through amused colors. "She's adapting, though she still sometimes forgets that she's supposed to ask the council before making major decisions." Marcus laughed. It had been a difficult transition for someone who had ruled absolutely for 1,000 years. But Zarathul was learning to be a leader rather than a ruler. The title First Speaker had been her own suggestion. She would be the voice of the Commonwealth but not its master. "Dr. Chen?" A young Zephyrian approached nervously. Marcus recognized him as one of the new students at the Commonwealth University, another institution that hadn't existed 6 months ago. "Just Marcus is fine. What can I do for you?" "I'm writing a paper about pre-contact human culture and I'm confused about something. You mentioned that humans fight wars against each other, but you also say you work together. How can both be true?" Marcus smiled. These kinds of questions had become common as Zephyrians tried to understand the complexity of human society. "Humans are complicated," he said. "We're capable of great cooperation and terrible conflict sometimes at the same time. We're not perfect, but we keep trying to be better. But how do you resolve the conflicts?" "Lots of ways. Sometimes we fight, which isn't great. But we've also developed ways to talk through problems, to compromise, to find solutions that work for everyone." The student's eyes shifted through thoughtful colors. "The council uses similar methods. Because you learned that conflict doesn't have to mean destruction. You can disagree with someone and still respect them." This concept had been one of the hardest for Zephyrians to grasp. Their old system had been built on absolute hierarchy. You either obeyed completely or you were an enemy. The idea that you could oppose someone's ideas while still working with them had been revolutionary. "Marcus," First Speaker Zarathul's voice called from inside the building. "The Earth delegation has arrived." Marcus felt his heart jump. After 6 months, his own people had finally come to see what had happened to their lost scientist. He found Zarathul in the main council chamber, along with a group of humans in diplomatic uniforms. Marcus recognized Dr. Sarah Webb, his former expedition leader, among them. "Marcus," Sarah rushed over to embrace him. "We've been searching for you for months. When the electromagnetic storm cleared and you were gone, we thought you were dead." "I'm very much alive," Marcus said, "and I have a lot to explain." The formal introductions took some time. The human delegation included diplomats, scientists, and military advisors. They were clearly amazed by the changes in Zephyrian society, but also somewhat suspicious. Dr. Chen, Admiral Harrison, the diplomatic mission leader, said during the private briefing later, "We need to understand exactly what happened here. Our intelligence suggests that the Zephyrian Empire was a hostile, expansionist power just 6 months ago. Now we're told it's a peaceful democracy that wants to establish trade relations. Marcus looked at Zarathul, who had been quietly listening. She nodded for him to continue. The Zephyrians weren't hostile because they were evil, Marcus explained. They were hostile because they were afraid. Their entire society was built on control and rigid hierarchy. They attacked other species because they saw them as threats to their order. And now they're learning that diversity makes them stronger, not weaker. They're discovering that cooperation achieves more than conquest. Admiral Harrison frowned. That's a pretty dramatic change for such a short time. Sometimes change happens slowly, Zarathul spoke for the first time. And sometimes when the right catalyst appears, it happens very quickly. She gestured toward Marcus. Your Dr. Chen showed us something we had never seen before. A species that was strong because of its differences, not despite them. He demonstrated that leadership could be about inspiration rather than domination. You're saying one human changed your entire civilization? Dr. Webb asked skeptically. No, Zarathul replied. One human asked the right questions at the right time. The change came from within us. We were ready for it. We had been ready for centuries. We simply needed someone to show us that change was possible. Over the following days, the human delegation toured the Commonwealth. They visited mixed-caste neighborhoods, attended council sessions where former servants debated policy with former nobles, and watched children from different castes play together in integrated schools. Dr. Webb found Marcus in the observatory where he had been working on a joint human Zephyrian archaeological project. This is incredible, Marcus, she said, looking at the ancient artifacts they had been studying. The historical insights you're gaining here will revolutionize our understanding of galactic civilization. It's not just about the past, Marcus replied. We're building something for the future. The Commonwealth wants to create an alliance of species based on mutual respect and shared knowledge. Is that what you want? To stay here? Marcus looked out at the city below, with its mixed architecture of ancient crystal spires and new buildings designed by committees of different castes working together. He could see Zephyrians and the first few alien immigrants walking the streets together, and hear the sound of children learning in multiple languages. Sarah, this is the most important work I've ever done. We're not just studying history, we're helping to write it. The formal alliance ceremony took place a week later. Representatives from dozens of species attended, including some that had been at war with the old Zephyrian Empire just months before. First speaker Zarathul stood before the assembly, no longer the terrifying queen who had emerged from the crystal cocoon, but someone who had learned to lead through service rather than command. Today, she said, we established the Galactic Cooperation Council, not as an empire built on conquest, but as a partnership built on the radical idea that our differences make us stronger together than any of us could be alone. Marcus watched from the audience as species that had been enemies signed agreements to share technology, resources, and knowledge. The principles were simple: voluntary membership, mutual respect, and the understanding that diversity was a strength to be celebrated, not a problem to be solved. After the ceremony, Zarathul found Marcus in the garden where they had first talked about art and friendship. I have been thinking, she said, settling beside him on the bench made of living wood. About what? About accidents. You came here by accident, entered my chamber by accident, changed everything by accident. Marcus smiled. Sometimes the best things happen by accident. Do you think it was really an accident? Or do you think the universe sometimes places the right person in the right place at exactly the right time? Marcus looked up at the alien stars, now surrounded by ships from dozens of different worlds, all here to celebrate the birth of something new. I don't know, he said, but I'm glad I got lost in that storm. Zarathul's laughter chimed like crystal bells in the evening air. So am I, my friend. So am I. In the distance, the first children born in the new Commonwealth played games that mixed traditions from a dozen different worlds. Their laughter rose into the alien night, carrying with it the sound of hope, the music of change, and the promise that sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we least expect them. Marcus had come to study the past, but instead had helped build the future, and as he sat with his alien friend under unfamiliar stars, listening to the sounds of a galaxy learning to work together, he knew that some accidents were worth getting lost for.